I told Mindy, I thought I sort of freaked you out when I asked if the legging came in one.
No, oh my gosh, I didn't even think, and then I
You
thought,
were like,
and
"Oh."
no, it was funny. Oh, too funny.
All right, think I can present this whole thing in like 6 minutes.
I think you can do it.
Ready, go. Hey, James. Oh. I never knew the little hand was on the Zoom thing. Were you with the executive session? Just when I was telling Manny there's a hand, I thought he was raising his step. That was a thing you put up that you want to be called on. And he's like, there's no hand. I'm like, yeah, there's a little hand. Like, and the mayor, take care of that on your own. Got it. Got it, Kim.
Too funny.
Oh God, I don't know. So, you know, if you wrote a book, they wouldn't believe it. Hi, James.
Hi, Mary.
Tonight, the holiday performance in Wilmington, Delaware, they are celebrating the newest star. LJ Marshall just turned 7, making his stage debut in the Nutcracker Ballet. His cat on with Cat and the Mouse. Warming up in the aisles, the hallways, the flips. What's incredible is that LJ has never performed on stage before, and only self-taught from videos online. The Wilmington Ballet saw videos and dancing performed right in his neighborhood on the street. His talent, his confidence, they would meet LJ and his family, offering him a full scholarship. Cartwheels, back bends, leg lifts, no fear. And before his big debut, telling us why he does it.
Make me happy and make me want to dance.
Hello, David. The ballet, lessons that so many are in health. Inspire other children to look like him, love what he's doing, and feel this thing. And I think that's something we all can learn from. It's all the moment. The splits, the leg lifts, and the splits again. Tonight, LJ's mother, Ramona, and all of us cry.
Dreams do come true. Just work hard and think of the rest of what you want to do and what you want to do.
Just the beginning. Now, see you tonight. New 7-5 set starts right.
Hello, Kate.
Good evening, everyone.
Kristen, what's Willow getting for Christmas? Oh, she's there? Never mind. Okay. I don't want to blow the surprise.
Oh, I was muted, sorry.
Oh.
Anna, that looks good on you.
Very proud to wear it.
Where is
Thank
she?
you. Thank you.
I don't see her. Where is she?
Right here, Mary. Look at my beautiful. check.
Oh, there you go.
It's
It's
much
so
warmer.
you.
It's
it's
much
just
warmer than what
you.
I had on.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Going.
Just looking to see if we've got the whole gang here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like we're missing Manny. I got that right? All right, well,
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be joining over. We just left our regular session, so let's go ahead and call our regular school committee meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. The Salem School Committee would like to hear from the public on issues that affect the school district and are within the scope of the committee's responsibilities. Spanish interpretation is available for anyone who needs it. I should also point out that we are operating virtually. Anyone who'd like the link to participate may find it at salem.com on the school committee calendar. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
For approval.
Motion made by Mr. Fleming. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Manning. All those in favor, Ms. Manning,
Yep.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Dr. Pingalo,
Yes.
Ms. Nuncio,
Yes.
and Mr. Cruz,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
and Mayor Driscoll. Yes, 7 members voting, 7 in the affirmative. Our agenda is approved. I'll entertain a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda. Motion made by Mr. Fleming. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Ms. Nuncio. All those in favor, Ms. Manning,
Yep.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Dr. Pingalo,
Yes.
Ms. Nuncio,
Yes.
Mr. Cruz, Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mayor Driscoll. 7 members voting, 7 in the affirmative. The matter carries. Public comment. Could I ask Jensen if there's any public comment? And if so, to please read or allow folks to speak if they are present.
Yep, we have 2 public comments tonight, one to be read and one to be read by an attendee. So I'll start with the first. This is from Jean. Forgive me for the pronunciation. Britsky Giglio of 54 Lawrence Street. The comment reads, "Good evening, school committee members. First, my family and I would like to take the time to thank Ms. Anna Nuncio. Thank you for all your dedication and hard work for our school district. We appreciate all the time you spend serving our board. As a parent whose child attended Salt and Stall through middle school, I enjoyed getting to know you more with National Hispanic Heritage Month with such joy. It was always such a joy to visit the Gables while you were there. You're a true gift to the people in our community's lives. Your positivity is infectious. This is not goodbye. It's my way of saying thank you for all your dedication and hard work for and on our school committee board. Wishing you all the best in the future and good luck with your new chapter. Keep in touch and happy holidays." Thank you to all our school committee board members for your leadership and commitment to our students, staff, and community. Your dedication and hard work for our school doesn't go unnoticed. Dr. Stevens Reich, hands down, best superintendent in Salem Public School System. Regarding last week's social media platform trend, though it was countrywide and not a direct threat, you and Madame Mayor took it as serious with precaution and secured safety at our schools. Thank you as always for everything you do to keep our schools, children, teachers, and staff safe. Wishing you members of the school committee board happy holidays and a happy new year. Here's to hoping to a pandemic to end emic. Just like to say, Liz did a wonderful job on the new website, a lot better than what it was, and really shows how hard this must have been to work on this. Everyone has their own opinions and voices, but I truly like it. Out with the old and in with the new. That is the end of that comment. And then the next comment is to be read by Ann Berman.
Ann, can you hear us?
I can. How is everybody tonight?
We are good. We are good. And so we're at the public comment period, and we know that you have some public comments. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good evening, Mayor Driscoll, Superintendent Zreich, and members of the school committee. I would first like to wish Ms. Nuncio a wonderful retirement from her school committee seat and thank her for her commitment to our students and educators. Your insight and perspective were always thoughtful and student-centered. I loved talking to you personally about your piano lessons and hope you are continuing them, and wishing you all the best in your next chapter in your life. Tonight's agenda includes a discussion around the request of the Salem Academy Charter School to expand by adding 30 more seats. The Salem Teachers Union does not support this expansion. While it is understood that Salem is capped financially with the number of seats we already fill at the charter school, we do not endorse opening up more seats that might impact our neighboring communities. We do not believe that Salem Academy serves a student population reflective of the Salem Public Schools based on the data on the DESE website. When looking at the selected populations of students whose first language is not English, English language learners, students with disabilities, students with high needs, and low-income students, the Salem Public Schools educates a higher percentage of these students. Salem Academy does not actively recruit our newcomers when they arrive in Salem. Salem Academy is not able to educate our most vulnerable population of students. When looking at the data from the DESE website, Salem Public Schools is only slightly behind Salem Academy in regards to the 2021 student achievement scores. Our district is working really hard to increase the offerings at Collins Middle School and Salem High School. In my opinion, there's no need to add more seats to a school that doesn't offer more by way of academic achievement and extracurricular activities for our students than our Salem Public Schools do. Thank you for your time this evening. Have a wonderful holiday and a happy, healthy new year, pandemic-free, I hope.
Thank you, Ann. Appreciate your comments.
You're welcome.
Any other public comments, Jensen, that we have? Okay, so that will end public comments for the evening, and we will move on our regular school committee agenda to the superintendent's. Are we doing the superintendent's eval, Ms. Manning? I thought we were putting that off. I'm sorry if you said that we
No,
were.
I believe that we're doing it.
Okay, so we are skipping educator showcase because I think our Bates school contingency can't make it this evening. So I will move on to the superintendent's summative evaluation and turn it over to Ms. Manning as vice chair, who's taken the lead on that process.
Thank you. I'll just very quickly, a little explanation for folks that are joining us. The superintendent of any district, just like all other professional staff in the district, are evaluated according to process delineated by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education with very specific criteria, very specific format, and a very specific process. Following that, what we have done in Salem traditionally, and have done again this year, is that each of the school committee members completes an evaluation form on their own individually. And then those get sent to the vice chair, and the vice chair compiles that into an overall sort of composite. What I'm going to do tonight is report out on that composite that I've put together. And I believe that at the end of the meeting, this will be posted for the public anyway, but I'll go over just some of the basics. What I did, just so you know, after I received this from everyone on the committee, each person checks off a different level of, their assessment. But then another very important part is that they fill in comments on the different sections. And what I did with the comments is go through all of our assessments, all of the comments, and take what I felt was sort of the high point or a significant point from each person's comment in each section. And those are what you're going to see on the evaluation that you'll receive. The comments in most cases were actually more extensive than that, but if we reviewed all 7 members' comments in all the sections, we would be here overnight. So we don't do that. We take the composite, and what I'm going to do is read you excerpts from those excerpts. All right, so we'll cover the entire document, but we're going to hit the highlights and then definitely report out on the scores in each section. So the first thing I want to explain to folks is we assess the progress toward the superintendent's goals, which he had set and we had met and agreed upon some time ago. There are 3 sections. This is a sort of one of the major sections, and there are 3 parts to that. There's a professional practice goal, there's a student learning goal, and then there can be 1 through 4 district improvement goals. We have, Dr. Zreik has concentrated on 1 for this first year. So I'm going to read those goals. They're relatively brief, and they are the basis for what we're talking about here. So I do want to just take a minute to review those with folks. The first one we're going to talk about is student learning goal. And I'm sorry, the professional practice goal. And the professional practice goal is that the superintendent will facilitate the development of a clear equity statement that is owned by multiple stakeholders. Additionally, the superintendent will create opportunities for the Salem Public School community members to consistently examine, recognize, interrupt, and transform systemic inequalities, leading to growth in his ability to make decisions rooted in the values and principles of inclusivity and acceptance. The overall possibilities of rankings on these goals, there are 4 categories. There are 5 categories. It could be a did not meet, so that he did not meet his goal. There could be some progress. There can be significant progress, met the expectation, the goal, or exceeded. And for the student learning goals, the overall assessment from the school committee when we put everything together is that he has made significant progress. The second goal is the professional practice goal. I read the wrong one for the student learning goal, because on one page there, one comes first and the other second. On the other page of the same form, they're backwards. So the one I just read you that he received a significant progress was on the professional practice, and that was the equity issue. The student learning goal is that the superintendent will coach and support school leaders to provide evidence-based feedback on professional practice, on school improvement goals grounded in equity, and on the implementation of the district strategy. Okay, that's the student learning goal. That is the one that he was assessed significant progress. The first one I read you on the equity statement, the assessment from the composite is that he has met that expectation. So I indicated wrong that very first thing. The third one in this category is a district improvement goal. And the district improvement goal is to build ownership and engagement of the district's revised strategic plan with critical stakeholders. In doing so, the Salem Public Schools will hold itself accountable for the implementation of the objectives, the initiatives, and the targets in the Salem Public School plan. And again, he was found to have made significant progress in that area. So professional practice goal on equity, he has met the goal. Student learning goal on coaching and supporting school leaders, he's making significant progress. And the district improvement goal, the strategic plan, significant progress. That's one major section. The second major section is an assessment on performance standards. And there are 4 standards. Each of the standards has several sections. I'll indicate those in a couple of minutes. And then he is evaluated on each one of those standards. Standard 1 is instructional leadership. Standard 2 is on management and operations. Standard 3 is on family and community engagement. And standard 4 is on professional culture. We're going to talk about those very briefly, each one separately. So the first standard, okay, is, get to the right page. First standard is on the instructional, and it's, okay, here we are. The categories in the instructional leadership standard: curriculum, instruction, assessment, evaluation, data-informed decision-making, and student learning. The overall assessment for this category for instructional leadership is that he is proficient. There are 4 possible levels of assessment in this one. You can exceed, you can be proficient, you can need improvement, or it's unsatisfactory, basically. So he is been assessed proficient in instructional leadership. And I'll read you some of the comments folks made in that area. Mayor Driscoll, I believe while we have made good progress in this area, we have more work to do to ensure all our schools are consistently improving. I'm grateful for the new data dashboard that will help support a district-wide accountability system that allows us to track both progress and incorporate shared values that reflect what Salem families and parents value for their child's educational experience. From Amanda Campbell. Dr. Reich has implemented a number of high leverage practices, particularly in the areas of communication, family partnership, and district vision for equity. I'm extremely appreciative of his straightforward and consistent communication throughout the course of the pandemic. For Mr. Cruz, in particular, I want to applaud the superintendent's commitment to a rigorous curriculum, to key investments in math and literacy, and a rich diversity of materials. The superintendent's goals, instructional goals, were clearly aimed at greater equity for students. For Ms. Nunzio, despite the disruption caused by the pandemic in all areas of school life, Dr. Reich's steadfast leadership and determined effort to assemble, motivate, and shape his leadership team to perform through all those conditions and deliver instruction and support for students and their families, all students and their families, was admirable. And from Dr. Pangalo, the district has made several upgrades to its curriculum and the programs offered under the leadership of Dr. Reich and his team. They need to continue the work to accelerate student learning as we respond to the events of the past 18 months. And I'm interested in how the interventions that affect our students' future and learning plans. So proficient in that standard. Second standard, management and operations. The categories here are environment, human resource management and development, scheduling and management of information systems, law, ethics, and policies, and fiscal systems development. He has received one in the area of the environment, exemplary rating as a composite. The other sections in this one are proficient. So the overall assessment, again, is a proficient rating in the second standard. And just a few of the comments. From Mayor Driscoll, I believe Superintendent Reich has made major strides in improving our cultural competencies and ensuring we support an inclusive and safe teaching and learning environment for all students and staff members within our schools. From Ms. Campbell, Salem has been a leader in the state of how to navigate uncertain times in the pandemic, particularly for our use of in-school testing and contact tracing protocols. Mr. Cruz, Superintendent Reich has demonstrated a tremendous aptitude for effectively carrying out the management and operations of the district in order to lead all administrators and staff to better serve all students. From Ms. Nunzio, Dr. Reich's leadership in motivating staff to create district improvement plans that detail specific areas of work tied to the district's 12 priorities is noteworthy and brings coherence to an effort that moves beyond good intentions to achievable objectives. Dr. Pangalo, in his self-assessment, Dr. Reich states that our COVID response was the envy of other communities in the Commonwealth, and I concur with that statement. So again, the second standard, the management is a proficient. The third standard is regarding family and community engagement. 4 sections: engagement, sharing responsibility, communication, and family concerns. Dr. Reich received 2 ratings of proficiency on engagement and sharing responsibility, and 2 of exemplary in the communication and family concern sections, which gave him a rating of exemplary on the overall for this third standard. From Mayor Driscoll, I believe Superintendent Reich has made major strides in improving our district's cultural competencies to reflect our community's values. From Ms. Campbell, one of the most consistent pieces of feedback I received from families is how much improvement they've seen in communication and how appreciative they are of the district's ability to communicate important information quickly and consistently. From Mr. Cruz, the superintendent prioritized the creation of a family engagement office staffed with both a district level leadership position and a manager. This shift in resources will transform the ways in which we engage and communicate with families. From Ms. Nuncio, impressive accomplishments on this front on the part of Dr. Reich and his staff. One area for growth is the establishment of more wraparound resources for the families in our district who are hardest to reach, particularly with respect to the effort expanding preschool programming. And the 4th standard is in the areas, oh, I'm sorry, there's one more, Ms. Campbell's, no, Dr. Pagalo's statement on the previous one. During the evaluation period, the district developed and implemented a comprehensive district-wide communication system, Parent Square, and created a Department of Translation and Interpretation. 2 major changes that have had an enormous positive impact on families in Salem. Many families have commented on how quickly he responds and helps resolve questions and concerns. The 4th standard is professional culture. 4 sections to this, I believe: commitment to high standards, cultural proficiency, communication, and continuous learning. He received a rating of proficient in all 4 of those, and that's giving us obviously an overall proficient. 2 more small indicators than that were managing conflict and shared vision. Comments for this section from Ms. Campbell: over the past 18 months, Dr. Reich has demonstrated a significant commitment to the development of a culture of high expectations for all students. This work, however, lives in the implementation. We're within the first year of these initiatives, and it will be important to ensure that it translates into significant impact for our students and in our schools. From Ms. Nuncio, impressive accomplishments on this front on the part of Dr. Reich and his staff. From Dr. Pangalo, Dr. Reich has created an environment for professional educators to reflect and grow within their positions and to be celebrated for their achievements and developments. He skillfully manages difficult discussions and potential sources of conflict with an honest, firm, and constructive manner. So going back to the beginning, we talked about the 3 goals and we talked about the 4 standards. So when all of the results, the assessments for each one of those are put together, then there's an overall assessment of the superintendent's work for the past year. So based on those, based on the step 1 and number 2, the overall rating is as proficient. And proficient is, just so you know, it's defined as Proficient practice is understood to be fully satisfactory. This is the rigorous expected level of performance. And the comments in this section, which I left for last. From Mayor Driscoll, Dr. Reich's leadership through these very daunting times has been invaluable. Communication and commitment has been paramount to the success of managing through the various twists and turns that have come throughout this pandemic. Notwithstanding COVID, Dr. Reich has taken a strategic approach to improving the structure and systems in operation in our district. And his work will continue to ensure that we are utilizing resources with an aim of positively impacting student outcomes and achievement. From Ms. Campbell. Dr. Reich has worked diligently to strike the right balance of stabilizing throughout the pandemic while also transforming district practices, moving us toward equity of access for all learners. From Mr. Cruz, Superintendent Reich proved throughout this year he is an exceptional educational leader and has a high degree of mastery across the standards. The superintendent exhibited a high level of commitment to equitable education for all children, strong family and community engagement, and the ability to devise a coherent revised strategic plan. From myself, Dr. Reich brought with him a belief system of core values that was sadly missing for quite some time at various levels in our district. Those values have permeated all his work from his first days here. A tremendous work ethic, a commitment to equity and to social justice, a sense of compassion and caring, and most importantly, a willing to understand his role as the leader, but also as a member of the team of several hundred who make up the Salem Public Schools. From Ms. Nunzio, Dr. Reich's inherently authentic leadership style motivates and uplifts everyone who works with him. And from Dr. Pangalo, he immediately had an impact guiding the development and implementation of a multifaceted plan for the 2021 school year that ensured we nimbly maintained high health and safety standards alongside our focus on equity and excellence. And that completes the report, which is basically touches the high points to the overall assessments, and the copies, as I said, will be available at the end of this meeting, I believe.
Ms. Manning, would you just want to make sure, maybe you said this at the beginning and I missed it, just overall summative report when you put everybody's information that they provided to you, their evaluation together?
Yep. The overall final one letter.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Well,
Yeah,
it's
yes.
not a letter,
the-
but yeah.
Yep, that the overall summative performance based on the goals and the standards is proficient.
Perfect. Just
Okay,
want- I
and
know
like I
that-
said, and proficient is the rigorous expected level of performance.
Correct. And I know there were certain categories where there was exemplaries, but when you put everything together, it came out with proficient, which I think especially in light of the year we had, shows just how hard Dr. Reich had to work to maintain that standard, not only operating schools, but operating schools during a pandemic. Definitely the most challenging time, I think, of most superintendents' career. Definitely grateful to have you in that role. Are there any questions for Ms. Manning with respect to the evaluation or any of the commentary that's been raised so far? So I know that we have goals that have been established going forward, and as we head into 2022, the expectation is that we'd set up some joint goals with the superintendent as we move forward, but definitely want to convey thanks and appreciation for all the work you have undertaken to date. I think since you started, it's been a firestorm, and you've handled it all with grace and put in position Salem certainly to be forward thinking, whether it had to do with COVID or how we're addressing our academic needs for our students and trying to ensure that students and families and staff had what they needed during a very trying time. So just exceptional work and grateful to have you here. I'm going to keep us moving through the agenda. Now, next up is our superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'll just say I really appreciate the feedback that I received, particularly the areas where, there's room for growth. I will make sure I read through carefully, and the guidance is incredibly helpful as we move forward. But I would be remiss if I didn't thank, I think Mary Manning mentioned her comments, like the hundreds of people. I'm very fortunate to work with a very talented group in the Salem Public Schools, the cabinet that's on this call. I mean, these things happen because these folks, and then of course, our many educators, our teachers, our staff, who have worked tirelessly. I can't take credit for a lot of what was just in my evaluation. It's a little weird to have your evaluation be in public in front of the world. That's just the deal with being a superintendent. But it is a chance for me to acknowledge the fact that none of this gets done without the team of people in the Salem Public Schools. So, I'm just very grateful. I walked into a good situation here. And while there was a lot of, there's some misperceptions about the Salem Public Schools, this was a very strong district to begin with a lot of talented folks. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I'm going to take the feedback. And I'm excited for the year ahead. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of places we can continue to improve, as was noted. And so I really appreciate the candidness and the time you took. And Ms. Manning, I know how Herculean a task it is to bring all of this together. So grateful for that feedback. A couple of other things. Speaking of the work of the team, today we launched a new website, and I want to thank Liz Pulley-Wettengale and Mark LeBlanc. Liz was the brains, the vision, the brains, and Mark played a role behind the scenes. And, I'm loving it. It's the best, holiday present I could get is a new website to play around and learn more about the Salem Public Schools, much easier to find. So, this just shows Liz was committed to making this change, and she was not going to stop until there was a new website. It's the first thing she told me on my first day. We got to change the website. So, kudos to Liz and all those that played a role in the new website. I did also want to acknowledge that in your packet, there is a note about you have a copy of the North Shore Education Consortium annual report. Not going to read it. I'm not going to refer to it. You just have it. It's a point of information. I put it in your packet. Well, I put it in last year, and you'll get it every year just for your information. My comments tonight are, there's 3 different parts. I'm going to try to walk through this quickly, but take questions after each section. There's 3 different pieces that I'm going to cover based on requests from the school committee. One was about ESSER 3 funding and how the district is using it and how we plan to continue to solicit input from the community. The second is around the Student Opportunity Act, which I had forgotten about the Student Opportunity Act until it popped back up on my screen last week. And the third piece of it is, to the points that Ann Berman made earlier, the Salem Academy Charter School expansion. The committee, I had mentioned that I was going to provide an update and sort of a reflection on their proposal. And you have backup materials in your packets for these different aspects. So I'm just going to share. I'm assuming everybody can see this. Okay, so we're going to start just talking about ESSER 3. I thought I'd stop at the end of this portion of the presentation and take questions. Many of these questions are better answered by Mary DeLai, who's with us, as well as Chelsea and Kate, who have all played a role in designing our application. So we're going to look back at the past 20 months. I want to give you an overview of ESSER and the current data around ESSER, and then what our roadmap is for engagement and continual planning through the end of ESSER. So this just gives you a sense of sort of where we've been over the last 18 months. But you want to take note down here that we did get 3 chunks of funding. ESSER 1, which was back in March through June of 2020, which covered a lot of the costs for the last school year. And then you can see where the arrow is. We had a budget process and forums in the winter of 2021. And then ESSER 2 kicked in. We received that funding in 2021. And then this should actually say summer of 2021 up here, by the way. And then ESSER 3, we received a notice that we were going to that we had a chunk of new money for ESSER 3, which is the biggest pot of the different COVID relief packages. We did have community engagement, which I'll talk about in a moment, as part of the budget form, and then right before the summer of 2021, which helped inform the application for ESSER 3. But so this just gives you an overview. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide. So moving forward, here are the different pots of money that we received. And back in August at our back to school presentation, we shared this with you. And that you can see the different grant names, but they're affectionately known as ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3, and then their technical names are in the, or acronyms are in the parentheses. And you can see the amount we've been allocated. The first pot, ESSER 1, the end date is September 30th. That has been all spent. ESSER 2, we're currently spending some of those resources right now, or many of those resources right now, but that extends until 2023. And then ESSER 3, which is the biggest pot that I mentioned, which is about $9 million, or just over $9 million, we can spend through September 30th. We have not received the funds because our proposal, like other districts, has not been accepted yet. So we are not yet spending money. Design a preliminary budget, we are not yet spending those funds. Just so you know, the period of availability for each set of funds is listed above, and it's determined by the statute plus one additional year, which was granted by the General Education Provisions Act. So that gives you a sense of how the $15.8 million that we've been allocated throughout this COVID period has broken out in the different grants. So a couple quick facts. We're going to talk primarily about ESSER 3, which is the biggest pot. As you know, as many of you know, it's also known as ARP ESSER, which was part of the American Rescue Plan Act, which the city also has received a chunk of funding as well. It was signed into law on March 11th. And again, I reiterate, when the funds can be used, there are flexibilities in how the funds can be used. Ideally it's to anything related to COVID relief or COVID response and other expenses as allowed by our Title 1 through 4 or IDEA, which is our special education funding. But specifically, the purpose of ESSER 3 is to support the safe reopening and sustaining safe operations of school while meeting students' academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the stated purpose of the funds. Okay, so just as we break down further, there's a couple of key requirements. While there is flexibility, there is some key requirements. We had to produce a plan for safe return within 30 days of our submission. The submission was October 4th. We posted before school our back to school plan. That constitutes our safe return to in-person instruction plan. We had one last year. We had an updated one to start the school year. This year, we submitted a plan on the use of ESSER on October 4th. We had to quickly, after we learned of how much money we were receiving. We needed to consult with district stakeholders in some way. We did engage during the budget process of FY21, and we also had opportunities for conversations, which we called opportunity conversations in the spring, where we heard from different stakeholders. We also plan to have an upcoming discussion. Wouldn't be this fall. The discussion is now in the winter. And I'm going to share more about what that engagement will look like. At least 20% of the award must be spent on lost instruction. So you'll see the investment that we made around academics, tutoring, small class size, and summer and out of school programming. We're well above the 20% in our initial proposal. There is a maintenance of equity provision, which is, the supplement, not supplant language, and we need to meet those requirements in the upcoming school year as part of ESSER 3. So now to again, this is the as a reminder, we did share this earlier. These are the budget priorities and investments that we heard from our community back in the spring, late winter, as we entered the budget process. This is what we used to guide us as we made our investment choices in our ESSER 3. Again, we've learned a lot since the return of school this fall. And that's why I think it's another inflection point for us to get more feedback from the community about how to use these funds. But this is what the community shared with us about 6 to 8 months ago around what they were hoping to see as we prioritize the different investments. And we talked to staff, we talked to students, and we talked to families. In collecting, there was a survey, and we also held not in person, but virtual forums. So as we looked at ESSER 3, we were at the point where we wrote our application. We had our equity statement, which is grounding our work. And we had, of course, the feedback we received that I just shared. And what we did is design 5 principles for investment. The first is this larger bucket about multi-tiered systems of support. We knew our students would be struggling around lost academics, and the need for more mental health and social emotional supports. Clearly, the pandemic wreaked havoc on the experiences and the lives of our young people, and that's only been reaffirmed by the return to school this year, as we've seen here and across the state and across the country. So we felt like there's going to be a whole bucket around multi-tiered systems of support, which we broke down into academics and then the mental health, social, emotional, and behavioral supports that students need. Second big bucket, as you know and noted in my evaluation, family and community supports and engagement is a huge part of our efforts as a district. That's the second big chunk, or third big chunk, with 1A and 1B. And then health and safety. Clearly, we've been trying to lead with health and safety all along. So work that Chelsea's done, and Charlene Mosky-Weber, Dr. Mosky-Weber, in their roles in our response to COVID, which I continue to be very proud of. And that's the fourth big chunk. And then finally, professional learning for staff. I mean, there's a lot of training we all need. Again, I've been humbled as a superintendent this year, a lot to learn. Nobody prepared any of us for what we're experiencing right now. And so there needs to be a significant investment in the training of staff. So that's how we broke up our application, or how we thought about our application for ESSER. And then this is just, you might have to study this. You have a copy of this presentation, but you can see those categories that I just mentioned, those buckets here, and how much the values in thousands of dollars. You can see the bulk of this application is in academic supports, which is over 5 million. And then you can see the breakdown and the other buckets. We did, to the right is a further itemized breakdown of what academic supports entails. It's a very large sum of money, and a lot of pieces were part of that effort. Our big work around pre-K expansion, which we heard loud and clear, was important to this committee, this community, the city, comes out of this bucket. I would point out that this is budgeted for FY 23 and 24. Again, I want to remind you, we haven't received this money. We are funding a lot of this in FY 22 currently using ESSER 2 funds. So this is the ESSER 3 budget for FY 23 and FY 24. Now I'll share more reflection on this in a moment, but I just want to share the data before I kind of break down a little further, sort of how we think about the way we've spent or allocated our funds. This is another way to look at it. Again, you could see the district priorities, or I should say district investments, and you can see how much we invested in each area, and then a current description of what we plan to use that funding for. Again, I would just want to call out that much of what's under academic support also dovetails with mental health and SEL. Providing students with small group instruction, providing smaller class sizes, which is all in the academic supports bucket, has a significant nexus with mental health and SEL. So I just want to call that out. And you could just see some of the ways we've committed the dollars thus far. None of this is etched in stone. We had to provide a budget because we had to submit our application. But again, there's a lot of there are significant opportunities to make adjustments here and to rethink the way we use some of these resources, because none of this has been spent thus far. A couple just reflections here. We acted quickly after ESSER 3 was released because we had to submit our application right after the school year started. Our application, again, has not been approved. And while dollars are allocated in buckets for the purpose of the application, the dollars have not been spent. And again, can be like any of the grants we receive can be adjusted. We put big numbers in different places, but with additional feedback and our analysis and data of what our kids need, those things can be adjusted. ESSER 2, as I said, is being used to pay for many of the priority items during the current year. Many of the items in ESSER 3 are budgeted for multiple years through FY24. So that the budget, like I said, includes funding for multiple school years. So the plan for pre-K is at minimum 3 years, FY22 on ESSER 2 and FY23 and FY24 on ESSER 3. I just talked about the connection between mental health and academic supports and how we structured our application. There are additional mental health and SEL services at Collins that are being purchased using ELT funds. For instance, we've hired health teachers at Collins, which we can talk about at a future meeting. We've hired additional counseling supports for Collins because Collins got an influx of funds, additional funds for their extended learning time, because they're one of the few schools in the state that continued having extended learning time, and the state had to distribute those additional funds. Staff paid by ESSER, this is very important, by ESSER 3 will require a new funding source beyond FY24, right? So eventually we are not going to be able to carry all of the staff unless we make other adjustments to our budget and shifts in staffing. But any of the areas that we've staffed up were with the intention of the immediate need and the aftermath of the pandemic, although the pandemic is clearly still not over. So I don't know, when we say post-pandemic, I think, we're clearly still living it. But the idea is that, and folks should know, the public and the committee, that there isn't a mechanism to continue some of the tutoring and some of the, so that's why we've been very careful with where we have staffed up. Pre-K, we have to be concerned about that. We've got funding for the next 2 years, but we're certainly hoping that from the federal government through some of the way we design our budget in the future, that there'll be ways to fund pre-K moving forward. But currently there isn't a mechanism to continue that staffing beyond FY24. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, we're interested in soliciting additional input from the SPS community, particularly in the area of mental health and SEL. We think we need to allocate more of the pot in that area. I think it's very apropos to have those conversations now, as we have been able to see how young people are presenting themselves coming back to school in person full time. And it allows us to have these conversations right now to make adjustments in what this budget will look like. So I just want to mention, this is my final slide in this area, is we're looking forward to having some community engagement. We want to have a session on Wednesday, January 5th from 6 to 7:15. This would be virtual given the spike and the surge in COVID. I think it's appropriate to do this first one virtually. And to get similar to what the city has done, the city's had some online forums regarding the ARPA funding. We plan to do that on January 5th. We'll send out a blast as we come into the new year, and we hope that many of the folks, staff, and community members will join us for that. And then we hope to have an in-person session at Salem High School on Thursday, January 25th, depending on the situation with COVID. And they're just simply, the key questions are, what aspects of our plan resonate with you? What additional ideas do you have for the way we use ESSER funds? I'm not trying to overcomplicate the conversation, but I think families and staff and the community do have a lot of valuable perspective to share about how we spend this influx of one-time money. So that that concludes my comments in this section. Mayor, I don't know if you want me to take questions now
Yeah, I
in this area.
I think it probably makes some sense to take it in chunks, given what's on the agenda for you
Yep.
under your superintendent's report. So questions and comments from committee members with respect to, either how we're spending ESSER funding now, obviously still seeking input for the next round, ESSER 4. I know for me, I have, you and I have talked about this, Steve, definitely have concerns about these cliff impacts, right? When you bring people on board, knowing that it's a temporary source of funding and we needed them. So it's not a, as we reopen the school year, having the additional personnel, be they tutors or additional folks to work on social and emotional needs were definitely necessary. But making sure we're thinking about that ramping down as well and how we operationalize and implement, the up and the down is going to be really important. I don't see us having this magnitude of resources, being able to keep something like this in place. And I also don't look forward to, packed budget hearings with concerns that we didn't think this through, or how do we manage through without personnel that we've currently hired. I just think that needs to be a front and center conversation that we're all engaged in. Other thoughts, questions, or comments for the superintendent? Dr. Pangalo?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the really clear explanation of all the different sources and buckets and how this is all fitting together. I think while I absolutely concur with the mayor's statement about concern about cliffs going forward and how do we manage that, I'm also looking at the allocation regarding academic supports. I'm just using that because it's the largest bucket. And then that mental health is coming and SEL is coming in at about 10% of that. And obviously, as you said, some of the academic support is also learning and health. Behavioral specialists are putting more resources into that area.
Yeah, definitely. And we had a conversation this morning about that very thing with our director of student services, who unfortunately couldn't join us here today, executive director Colin Tony. But definitely, I think we have added, 6 behavior specialists across the schools this year. And I do think that it's a little out of whack from the buckets, as you mentioned. There is a nexus and there is some crossover with academics, but I'm really looking to get more input and feedback in these upcoming sessions from our staff and from families about what other items that they'd like to see. I mean, again, knowing that any staff that we add, is going to be a problem 2 years from now, but what other one-time supports can we look to, I think is a question that is a healthy question for all of us to be asking around the mental health and social emotional needs of students. And so I look forward to those discussions. I've started to have those with my teacher advisory group, the STU. They've offered some really good thoughts, but like I said, this is not, I don't want anybody to think that this is rock solid. I mean, we can shift. And 2, we have to think about equity, right? Where some schools have more significant social emotional needs than others, and where might we need to provide more resources to one place because students are presenting there with more challenges than others. So I'm looking forward to having those conversations in these upcoming forums.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other comments? I see Ms. Manning's hand and then Mr. Cruz.
I have a couple of questions. I'm maybe comments. I'm not opposed certainly to the additional behavior specialists, but I just always, I guess I just want to point out that in some ways, behavior specialists are dealing with behaviors which are already happening, and they are the result of something else, whether it's you know, a mental illness or emotional, you know, situations, or just the results of the pandemic or whatever. So I don't want to, and I know you referenced that you had gotten some more counselors, but I just don't want to be thinking too much about behavior folks who are after the fact sort of dealing with the presentation of the other issues, you know, and at least that's my perspective. I'm just throwing that out there. I had two concerns with about the staff. You had mentioned that you were going to get more input from the community, and you did mention you were going to get more input from staff, but the community you already have like lockdown dates, and so it seems like it's a little more ready to go than staff. And I just want to make sure that the staff, and I understand the teacher advisory group, et cetera, but even just more of another round of a way for just all staff to kick in with comments and stuff, because they were asked before on some of this, but now they're living the life for the last like 5 months. And now they're really not, you know, none of us, I think we all expected things were going to be rough, but I don't think too many of us expected they were going to be as rough as they are, you know, for students. And so now the staff have been really in the front line with the problems and the issues and trying to help and support, but they may have a slightly different take now on what they need, what they would put some money toward, or what they might put more toward or less toward. So I just want to make sure that really, you know, they get a solid chance to contribute that information. And my other concern is a lot of the discussion is about the mental and emotional health of the students. But there are some staff that I think are in pretty rough shape, you know, and I don't really hear too much about that. And I support for staff are in place or are going to be put in place. Because something goes wrong and you read about how the counselors will be on hand to provide support to the staff and students. And like, what about who provides the support to the counselors? You know, I mean, I think a lot of the counselors are on real thin ice, you know, because they're supporting everybody else. You know, I think those different ways that it's playing out among the grownups, I want to make sure that we're paying enough attention and planning enough resources and stuff for that whole piece, which don't hear a lot about. So just want to throw those things out there.
Thanks, Ms. Manning. Dr. Reich?
And I appreciate those comments, Ms. Manning. I agree with you on the staff conversations, and we'll definitely have specific sessions for staff. I think you make some good points there for sure about their well-being and support for staff. As far as the behaviors, I have to say I'm very impressed with the way that our behavior specialists, you know, have the folks we have. I don't see them as like a quote unquote bouncer who just comes into it. You know, they do a lot of work ahead of time. They're building really positive relationships. Many of our behavior specialists reflect the demographics of the community and I've been really pleased with what I've seen from our behaviors. I mean, as you know, I have the 6th grade outside here, and we have a fabulous behavior specialist who I think does remarkable work and is not just brought in to sort of, you know, be a police person, but rather builds really meaningful, engaging relationships with their young people and intervenes well before there are issues. You know, I'd love to be able to hire more counselors as well, but I also, there's also a shortage. We've struggled to fill adjustment counselor positions right now as well. We've had a couple of openings for a while to fill. So, but I you know, I think we need to just think strategically about what the best use of those funds is. But you know, you raised definitely some good questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, Mayor Driscoll.
Dr. Zreck, really appreciating this presentation. Thinking about the mayor's comments regarding the cliff and some of these staffing considerations. I think one of the other pieces, and apologies for any background noise, you might hear some raspberries going off in the background. I'm thinking about the cliff that we're talking about, some of the staffing adjustments that we've made, and wondering about where the opportunities are to think about pipeline at this time. So I know that there's some investments with respect to the para educators that we have in our district, but then I'm also thinking about, where we're at with DESE, emergency licensure. I see a substantial investment in areas like high dosage tutoring. So I just, at some point, I think it would be great if we could get a sense of the number of folks that we're bringing into the district with some of these dollars, right? Some of the targeted interventions that we're thinking about with our para educator pipeline, but then also maybe doing some projecting out regarding some of the vacancies that we would have by the time some of these funds expire, as we really try to map out, I think, a more intentional process of thinking of how can we retain some of the talent that we've brought into the district. What are some of the pathways that we could be establishing for some of these folks, as we know that there is not just a shortage among staff, but there is the quote unquote great retirement across the industry and certainly within education. So I think a more intentional conversation around personnel, staffing, what we can expect for attrition over the next couple of years, who are some of the folks that we're bringing in, and are there pathways that we can get folks on track for over the next couple of years to ensure that we're kind of layering in the right kind of supports to fill up some of those vacancies with people that clearly are being integrated into the Salem Public Schools and our culture, are knowing our kids and our families. So I think that would be welcome conversation that we could be having on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, so Mayor, do you mind if I
Yeah,
respond?
no, please, Dr. Zreck. Yeah.
So a great point, Manny. I mean, Kim Talbot's the right person at some point to bring in to this work. I mean, she's passionate about just what you said, Manny. I'm really excited. The commissioner said on his call the other day, although it's not yet in writing, but he said it, is that they're extending the emergency license through the end of 23, which is huge for us and other districts to allow many of the folks that you just discussed to stay with us and elevate into teaching positions in the district. The fact is, we've already moved a lot of the people that came in as tutors, paras, some building subs already into teaching positions. We just worked on an MOU with the union so that those folks could leave or shift from a building sub position to be a classroom teacher position to cover for someone who's ill or a gap that we had. So those things, that's moving. We can certainly provide you with an update. Kim Talbot has done amazing work in recruiting young folks of color and diverse folks to join our team in different roles through our community partners, through Salem State, through Endicott. Kate, I don't know if you want to add anything to that as well, but we should certainly think about bringing Dr. Talbot to a future meeting.
I would agree. I don't have anything to add. I think it would be best for her to tell the story.
Any other committee members have questions or comments as we're on this? Obviously lots more to do with respect to ESSER, and I think more good conversations to have about how best to utilize these dollars, and also be mindful that they're one-time resources and aren't here for a sustainable timeline. So thinking about that as well.
All right, should I continue
Yeah,
on?
keep
I just
going.
want to point out that Mary Delai is constantly in my ear about exactly what you just said about, and I saw her, nodding her head to those comments, because she does reiterate that to us every day about the fact that this funding will go away and we're going to have to make adjustments for that. But moving along, we are going to the next portion is about SOA, the Student Opportunity Act, and I'll just acknowledge, I'm still learning what this means for Salem. So many of you on the committee studied this and discussed this at length in 2019 when it first came out. And, so I'll let you speak to that as I think Mary and I are still trying to learn about what the implications are for Salem. So I'll just say this. I just want to share that, as you know, there was a revolutionary change in the way K-12 funding is administered by to a revision of the Chapter 70 formula that was intended to address inequities in how funds are allocated, with a particular intended focus to be on low-income communities with low tax bases in particular. Salem, as a community that has a significant low-income population, though, because of the perceived ability for us to allocate resources to schools, Salem did not receive significant increases in Chapter 70 as part of the state's contribution and the shifts in the Student Opportunity Act. So, and I know there are committee members that can talk a little bit about it. A lot of it, I think, was pinned on the power plant. And I think there are other, and then obviously the revenue the city generates, but I'll let others talk more about that. At the time in 2019, districts had to write a 3-year plan. And there were 4 pieces to the plan, and you can see what those are. Every plan in the state had to have those 4 components. It had to address struggling student groups, had to choose specific evidence-based programs, and monitor success and progress in reducing disparities, and then have a mechanism to engage families, particularly those representing student groups most in need. Salem School Committee approved the plan that was submitted to the state. You guys approved it in March of 2020, and it was focused on high school redesign, the BAR model at Salem High and early college, and then a co-teaching model for multilingual learners. That I provided a copy of that application or plan in your packet. That was, and then we were asked to look at it after the pandemic, and Jill Conrad submitted it formally in December of 2020. So last December. So the initial plans for the Student Opportunity Act were developed before COVID. And then year 1 was extended multiple times, as I mentioned, to encompass 2 years. And there were no Chapter 70 increases in 2021, but there were Chapter 70 increases in 21-22. DESE is now asking us, or all districts, to relook at their plans in light of the pandemic and the influx of ESSER funds. They want us to take into account as we put together a new plan. And all districts are being asked to resubmit their 3-year plan by April 1st, 2022. So I'm going to have to we're going to have to discuss this at a future school committee meeting and get your support. We are considered what's called a short form district. Our Chapter 70 increase was only $129,450 for FY22. That's the current fiscal year. We only need to submit a shorter application, and that's for any district who has increases, whose Chapter 70 increase was less than 1.5 million. Sadly, ours was significantly below 1.5 million. And we have to explain in our request, and a lot of the same sort of rationale that you saw from my ESSER presentation, but we'll go into this application or plan. We need to explain how funding is being used and braided to close Student Opportunity Acts. Again, 129,000 doesn't go very far, but we do have to justify, or we do have to explain how we plan to use those funds moving forward. So we were just provided with an electronic copy of the submission, and we will be working on that and asking the school committee for approval prior to the April 1st, 2020 deadline. So those were my only comments with SOA. I'm sure there are comments that the school committee members would like to make about Salem's portion of that our annual allocation. So I'll stop my share and turn it back over to the committee.
Thank you, Dr. Zreik. Comments or questions for Dr. Zreik? Mr. Cruz, is that a hand up or?
No, it's not, Mayor. Apologies.
Okay. Just resting, wasn't sure. Obviously, lots more to come on SOA. Both we hope that number will increase as we as the new calculations happen when you head into the next fiscal year, and also would be interested in seeing where the administration is interested in changing the current plan, if there are changes beyond what was previously. Anything else on funding? We just had a, pretty extensive talk about ESSER and about SOA, both of which are still, I would say, in the works and opportunities for input from committee members as we move forward. Seeing nothing else there, I'm going to move us ahead, Superintendent. I know you're also hoping to talk about the Salem Academy Charter Schools expansion request and the North Shore Education Consortium's annual report. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything more about the North Shore report. It's just in your packet.
Okay.
It's good nighttime reading for people. Just on the Salem Academy Charter request, I did want to just touch on sort of my analysis of this. It's still about as clear as mud to me. So I'll just, after talking to the Department of Ed, but I'll do my best to tell you what my judgment or my assessment of their request. You do have a copy of the request in your packet. I had sent it to you previously as well. So Salem Academy submitted a request to the Department of Education for an expansion of 30 seats. Just as a history lesson, I learned previous to 2015, they had 372 seats. In 2015, they had an expansion to 480 seats, and now their current request would sit at 510 seats, of course, in grades 6 through 12. Their rationale, in a nutshell, is to accommodate decline in attrition at their high school level. They claim to be retaining, or they state that they're retaining more students from middle to high school than they were before, and so their numbers have grown in enrollment. And they also, their concern is running the risk of not receiving funding for the increased enrollment of the students that they are retaining. So that's the rationale. I mean, that's very quick, my quick description of the sort of the why. A couple of the thoughts here is, just so you know, the city of Salem is capped at 469 charter seats. That's at all charters that we send students to. Most of our students do go to Salem Academy, but we do have students that attend other charters like Lynn, KIPP Lynn. I think there's a charter in Marblehead, a few students in those places. It's approximately 9% of the enrollment of our foundation enrollment, which is not SPS enrollment. It's the city of Salem's school age enrollment. The per pupil amount that we send per student, which includes reimbursement that we received, is approximately $14,464 per student. Generally, what I've learned is any increase in Salem Academy's capacity does not appear to have a fiscal impact on the Salem Public Schools, because Salem is capped at the 469 seats. Now, a couple considerations. I think the impact of expansion will be that more Salem charter students who attend charters from Salem will over time be funneled to Salem Academy, right? That the state will be very clear and strict if their expansion goes through, that more students who live in Salem who attend charters want to attend charters will have to do so at Salem Academy. It will increase the state subsidy for the school. Right now, Salem Academy already is over their own enrollment cap, which is different than the city of Salem cap, if you can follow me. And the state is subsidizing that. They subsidize for siblings. It's not necessarily coming from the city of Salem, but it is coming from state funds. And it may also increase enrollment from other communities that are not capped. So while Lynn is capped, they have a charter cap. Other communities like Beverly and Marblehead, and I'm not sure about Peabody, but they still have room to send students to charters, and so it may increase some enrollment. Salem Academy can take 20% of their enrollment can be from outside of the city of Salem. There is concern. I am concerned that our citywide school age population is dropping. That's independent. Our enrollment has dropped, but also the number of school age children is dropping in Salem for all the reasons that we've discussed. In my opinion, it does not suggest a need for any expansion of seats, given the fact that the overall number of of kids because of birth rate, students moving out, choosing, not even choosing other options, just physically, the number of kids has just gone down. I am concerned it's a backdoor to increase enrollment of Salem students at Salem Academy. While it may not hurt us fiscally, it is a way to enroll more Salem students at Salem Academy, even though we're not necessarily going to be footing the bill for that. I'm also concerned, and it's clear the state is still grappling with this as well, but Salem at one time was one of the, was in the 10% of lowest performing districts. And at that time, some of you may remember that, when that happens, you can take up to double the amount of charter students can leave your district. So Salem at one time was an 18% district. And so I'm not sure how right-sized the community is and Salem Academy is, because Salem is no longer one of the 10% lowest performing districts. And so there seems to be some right sizing that needs to be done, not necessarily expansion from my perspective. And so let me just final reflections here. I don't recommend that we support this expansion. I plan on having a conversation with the state about it. It's still with a specific city focus. So remember, Salem Academy's mission is Salem children. It has a very specific city focus. It's not a regional charter. So it's unclear to me how they can expand when there is a cap. It's a little murky to me still. And so while there won't be a financial loss from my read of it, I think the optics are a little troubling to me that this expansion is occurring. And I think, and I would just say, DESE, I just want to remind folks that DESE requests public comment on this request by Friday, January 7th. And the board is going to review this request at their board meeting on January 25th. So, we've submitted nothing formally. I haven't submitted anything formally as of yet, but that's something that the public is able to do, committee, and certainly I may move in that direction, given the questions that I just shared here tonight. So I will pause there and take questions.
Yep, thanks, Dr. Drake. Questions from committee members? I think trying to get my arms around exactly what they're requesting has been a struggle, understanding why they need this request, given that they're capped in Salem. I think clearly, but I think we want to keep as many of our allowing an expansion that could lead to more of our students heading to SACs is not something that I would be supporting, and I don't know where other committee members are. We don't have anything on the agenda. I'd also say as an action item. So if we wanted to act collectively, we'd have to do that at a future meeting, and or just individually take action with respect to submitting commentary before the meeting on the 25th. Thoughts, comments, questions from committee members? Mr. Cruz?
A comment and then a question for you, Mayor. So I think on my end, Dr. Zark, appreciating your recommendation here based on the considerations. It doesn't seem like there's a clear connection between expansion and the proposal. So on my end, can't support that. And I'm just wondering, question to the mayor, does it make sense if we can't, isn't there an option to act collectively, like we'd be supporting the superintendent's recommendation at this time, just in case that he does want to go and provide public comment? He can come back and say, I did bring this to my my school committee, and this is where they landed on this particular issue. So wondering if that's an option for collective action in addition to some of the other pieces that you had mentioned.
Yeah, I'd ask for folks' judgment here. We don't have an action item listed. And therefore, if it's not on the agenda, it's on the agenda under superintendent's report that he's going to be discussing this. but we do not have it listed as an action item. And I believe under the open meeting law, we're required to list items like that prior to taking collective action. You can certainly all individually, indicate where we're at, and the superintendent can incorporate that into his thinking if he's planning on making a recommendation. But I don't know that we can take a collective action, resolution or otherwise, Mr. Cruz, without it being on the agenda.
Thank you for clarifying. So I appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions from committee members? Dr. Pangalo?
Yeah, I was just curious at some of the numbers given and how that reflects a percentage of our student body of the same grades. And I am not sure that I have the correct numbers lining up columns and things. But it looks to me like we started off, or not started off, but around 2010 that the charter school is about 14% of our students in grades 6 to 12. And then by 2015, it was 20%. And then right now it's about 29%, and they're asking to go to about 31% of our student body currently in Salem Public Schools. And that's both their increase as well as ours. We've talked about our enrollment declines, and I'm concerned about that balance. I'm also concerned about, while it may not be affecting the city of Salem's fiscal and our school districts fiscally, it is that money's coming from somewhere, and it's coming from the state, and therefore that money cannot do other things. And I'm not entirely sure I'm not sure that I see that as the investment that in education that I am comfortable with at this point. So I am not currently supportive of this either.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Dr. Zrike? I mean, we certainly individually can reach out to the board. It sounds like Dr. Zrike is going to be making a recommendation to DESE. We can try and put this on the agenda for our next meeting. There was discussion about perhaps not having a meeting on January 3rd. We're scheduled to have a meeting on the 3rd, but there's not a lot on the agenda for that, and it is in the middle of the break. So there was some thought about that may not be necessary for us to meet. We'll be meeting earlier in the day for our inauguration, our regular reorganization meeting, and which is typically not a business meeting per se, just a reorg meeting. But I'd be open to people's thoughts on this. Ms. Campbell?
I'm sorry, Dr. Zrike, could you just restate the dates for the board's public comment and the decision?
Yeah, so the public comment deadline is Friday, January 7th, and the board is going to review the request, Salem Academy Charter's request at its January 25th board meeting.
Okay, and so our January 18th meeting falls after public comment, but
That's
before
correct.
the decision. Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to do it the first week back in January.
Yeah.
I have to have a meeting.
I'm certainly open to whatever the will of the committee is in terms of a formal resolution versus individually submitting our own comments. I echo the same concerns as our union president, bringing up the diversity of the student population as compared to ours. Dr. Pangalo's concerns around the numbers and the feasibility of it. And I also have significant concerns about it. I'm happy to submit my own comments in regards to that. I'm also happy to support an open formal resolution at whatever meeting we decide makes the most sense.
Any other thoughts or comments? Okay, why don't we can speak later in the meeting relative to calendar and see what's going to work with respect to how we want to proceed. We'd have to put it in place at a future meeting. I'd also say if we're meeting before the 25th, while public comment would have expired, I don't think adopting a resolution on the 17th, I think is the date of that meeting, will go unnoticed or not incorporated into the board's meeting on the 25th. So we can certainly take action before they meet and individually submit comments so they're in under the public record comment. But it's not my experience that the board blocks their ears after the the public comment period ends. So that could certainly be sent to the board for their board meeting. Okay. And then Dr. Strike, the North Shore Education Consortium Annual Report, that was just something you noted as in our package, but no further comment necessary. Is that right?
Yes, but can I just share this last slide?
Yep.
I just want to share that thanks to just quickly get to the end. Thanks to the city of Salem, we're able to provide at-home rapid test kits to our every student and staff member in the district. And we'll be delivering those along with instructions in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And then we're asking people to test once before their largest gathering over break and once on Sunday, January 2nd, before returning to school on the 3rd. And anybody with a positive result has to stay home and needs to get a PCR test. So the distribution will be Wednesday, December 22nd. We are not going to be distributing before then. We don't want people to leave before then. And we want to make sure we get everybody over the last 2 days of school, Wednesday and Thursday. So thank you to the mayor and the city of Salem for their support in doing that. And I do want to wish everybody a happy holiday and enjoy hopefully a safe and relaxing and enjoyable time with your families and loved ones. And we'll see you in 2022. That concludes my comments, Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Strike. And we should thank Governor Baker, because the Baker-Polito team is the group that got us 24,000 tests or 12,000 kits. And we're trying to distribute them to certainly our most needy or disadvantaged population, as well as members of the general public. And they are in high demand, so they are flying out the door. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Strike? If not, I will move us on in our agenda. Maybe before we get to, I don't think our student representative, I don't think Al was here tonight, but we do want to make sure we provide special recognition to Miss Nuncio. So maybe before we move on to sort of the run-of-the-mill business items, we can do that. Mr. Cruz?
Mayor Driscoll, Awa did reach out to Ms. Campbell and myself just to inform us that she's unable to attend as she's doing some schoolwork. She did ask us to just share a brief student representative report. And so just wanted to share two things. Number one, the students are currently in the process of planning their first retreat. And then number two, the students did complete the elections of the officers of the Student Advisory Council. And I just wanted to share the names and the positions for the record. And so as vice chair, 12th grader Jimena Puello was voted by her fellow students. Corresponding secretary, 12th grader Emily Mercanti was voted in by her peers. Press secretary, 12th grader Suning David was elected by her peers. And then Alana Heenan, 11th grader, was voted in as treasurer. So those are the names, and I'm happy to send them over to Ms. Frost for the record. But that's the conclusion of the student representative report.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And then next item on the agenda, we have a bunch of business items, but I think now might be a good opportunity for us to recognize Ms. Nuncio, for whom this is her last meeting. We're going to try and draw this out as long as we can, Anna, to make sure you get the full flavor of what you'll be missing. You know, you've been a valued member of our school committee. Unfortunately, we're not in public we're not meeting in person where we could share with you the official city seal. I want to read it here, but before doing so, I want to make sure we recognize your contributions over your last term, your first and last term as the policy subcommittee chair. No easy job, one of our busier committees that took on a number of important revisions and new policies within our schools, really aimed at making sure all of our students, staff felt not only safe, but also welcome and supported. Your perspective has helped us ensure that we're thinking, when we say all means all, and putting that to work in how we approach operations within Salem Public Schools. Really grateful for the service you put in, not only on this committee, but you've done so much in our community. When I think about the House of Seven Gables, the work you did working in our district when you worked here at one time, really grateful for all you've done on behalf of Salem Public School students, often students who families don't feel like they have a voice. You've been a voice for them. Just want to thank you for that. And I will read this city seal, which I believe we have gotten to you, or we've gotten nearly to you. All
Nearly.
right.
She's gonna-
All right, you've got it. Good. I knew it made its on its journey to Miss Manning's house. I'm glad it got to you. And just we presented you with this city seal and wanted to honor and recognize you for your work on the school committee, in recognition and gratitude for you for not only your work and service to the greater Salem community throughout your 4-year tenure on the Salem School Committee, but for all you've done for our community throughout your work in Salem Public Schools and beyond. You've persistently held to dual visions. First, you've worked diligently to ensure that our English language learners and their families are receiving all necessary support as they work to learn in their new country and grow to become healthy, successful, and kind citizens. You've also worked from the broader view of what is necessary for all students and their families to learn and to grow into healthy, successful, and kind citizens, both locally and globally. You've done that as a school committee member and as a community member. For all of your hard work, you have performed it with grace and with wisdom. A quiet voice, but you raised the bar for all of us. And we want to wish you the very best on all your future endeavors, both to you and to Tim, who now gets a little bit more of you, to enjoy your time and know that you served our Salem school children, staff, and our community very well. Thank you, Anna, for everything you've done. In addition to a city seal, I think we got you some swag. Maybe, are you wearing the jacket? Yep, there we go. All right. We are truly going to miss you and appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you for the roses and my beautiful jacket and the beautiful commendation as well. I feel as I come to this meeting, so many unfinished conversations with colleagues and with the body as a whole, but I will stay working in the community. Tim and I cannot take off to our plans to go to Broadway shows just yet or any other travels. But thank you very much for your kind words. And it's been a pleasure and a privilege working with you.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
So we'll get on to the more mundane topics. We'd much rather just recognize you and toast you, but we also have a few other items. Most importantly, a deliberation and vote on the memorandum of understanding between the Salem School Committee, the Salem Teachers Union regarding recognition of family engagement facilitators. I would entertain a motion for that. We had an earlier session, an executive session to go through the details, and I think we're all very pleased that this piece is finally in place.
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Manning. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Fleming. All those in favor, Ms. Manning,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Dr. Pangalo,
Yes.
Ms. Nuncio,
Yes.
Mr. Cruz,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
and Mayor Driscoll. Yes, 7 members voting, 7 in the affirmative. The matter carries. Next up is a vote to endorse and support a district statement of inclusivity for our LGBTQ+ families. I know that we had talked about this previously. Open to any additional commentary that members of the committee have. Ms. Campbell?
Sure. So this came before the equity subcommittee. It's the result of a lot of hard work on the behalf of the LGBTQ+ action group, spearheaded also by our own Liz Pulley-Wettengell. We were really thrilled to see this. We think it's a great addition to, or the perfect complement to our already existing equity statement. We unanimously voted to move it forward and in support of it. And we're just really thrilled that we have such a vocal and active group to continue to help us advance opportunities like this.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Any other comments or questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to endorse and support this statement.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Cruz. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Pangalo. Any further comments or questions? I'd like to thank the Equity Subcommittee and others. I know this was a compilation for your hard work putting this together. I think it's very reflective of our values and grateful for the time you put in. Seeing no other comments or questions, all those in favor, Ms. Manning,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Dr. Pangalo,
Yes.
Ms. Nuncio,
Yes.
Mr. Cruz. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell
Yes.
and Mayor.
Yes, sorry.
Yep, Mayor Driscoll, yes, 7 members voting, 7 in the affirmative. The matter carries. Next item on our agenda is our budget transfers. Were there budget transfers in there? I think I missed them in my packet if they're there.
There are 3 budget transfers for this evening.
I would,
Page 73 is the first one.
I would entertain a motion if somebody would like to make it. I'm just gonna, while I'm pulling it up. While we're all pulling it up.
Well, that's, while you're pulling that up, I just also wanted to note on budget transfer 3, there is a mistake in the account description. The account number is correct, but the description, which says Medicaid billing services, should actually say special education collaborative tuition.
Duly noted. I would entertain a motion if somebody would like to make it for, we can take these transfers up as on an omnibus motion if folks feel like that's a worthwhile endeavor. We can take them up individually. Mr. Fleming. I'm sorry, Mr. Fleming, did you have your hand raised?
You're on mute.
You're on
Jim.
mute, you're on mute, Jim.
Omnibus motion for approval of all 3 budget requests.
Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Fleming to approve all 3 budget requests, and we will make sure the amendment is noted that Ms. Delai just, the correction, the edit is noted as Ms. Delai just mentioned.
Excuse me, second.
Seconded by Ms. Manning. Any further discussion or comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, Ms. Manning?
Yep.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes,
Dr. Pangalo?
Yes.
Ms. Nuncio?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
And Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
And Mayor Driscoll, yes. 7 members voting, 7 in the affirmative, the matter carries. Subcommittee reports. We have a number of policies. One up for its final and third reading. That's the policy 1101.01 non-discrimination policy and 1103 distribution of notices. I'd entertain a motion to approve that for third reading. So moved by Ms. Nuncio. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Cruz. Any further comments or questions? This is the final and third reading. Seeing none, all those in favor, Ms. Manning,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
yes,
Dr. Pangalo,
Yes.
Ms. Nuncio,
Yes.
Mr. Cruz,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
and Mayor Driscoll. Yes, 7 members voting, 7 in the affirmative. The policies for third reading are approved. We've got policies for first reading. Policy 1107, the public's right to know, 1102, advertising in schools, and 1105, media relations and news releases. I would entertain a motion to approve for first reading. Motion made by Ms. Nuncio. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Campbell. Under discussion, anything in particular anybody on the policy committee would want to make sure we are aware of here? Anything substantive? I know we have the policies, so folks have make sure they're taking a peek at those. That'd be great. Mr. Cruz?
I did just want to note that some of these policies we did put to the attention of Liz Pulley-Wettengale just to get her thoughts on a couple of the pieces. And I know that we also did just confirm with council over at the city side regarding some of the connections to the open meeting law and public records. So those are just some of the folks that we have checked in with respect to some of these policies, given the implications for community relations.
Okay, great. Yeah, there's nothing major in terms of, substantive changes for sure, just more like edits and corrections. So motion's been made for first reading and seconded. If there's no further comments or questions, I will go ahead and call the roll. All those in favor, Ms. Manning,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
yes,
Dr. Pangalo,
Yes.
Ms. Nuncio,
Yes.
Mr. Cruz,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mayor Driscoll, yes, 7 members voting, 7 in the affirmative. First reading moves ahead. Last one is a policy review requiring no changes. There are no changes. I'm not sure that we need to take any action on it, but I do appreciate it being noted on the agenda. So folks are aware that there was a review made by the policy committee. It was just such an excellent policy. They didn't need to do anything to it. Last item on our agenda before we adjourn is school committee concerns and resolutions. If there are any school committee members who have concerns or resolutions, please let me know so I can call on you. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, Mayor Driscoll. I promise to be brief. I just wanted to, again, thank Ms. Nuncio for her service to the school committee. I wanted to note a few things that I had discussed with her at policy alongside Ms. Manning. She is a trailblazer here for the school committee. She is the first Mexican-American to have served on our school committee. And she has been a consistent voice for equity for our Latino community here in Salem and across the Commonwealth. Personally, she has been someone who I've relied on many a times to get perspective. We took our first ride together on Mask all the way down to the Cape for a training, and we've held a pretty good relationship. And so really appreciate the work, Ms. Nuncio, and your approach. You're very thoughtful. You'll certainly be missed on the committee, but I know that we'll find you in La Comunidad. And so just want to express my thanks to you for all the work that you've done on the committee, for your friendship, for your leadership. And I know that we'll continue to hear from you as well. So please do keep in touch.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Any other school committee concerns or resolutions? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn while wishing all of us and all of our members and our staff and our students and our families a very happy holiday break. It feels like May, but it's really only December. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Mr. Fleming. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Cruz. All those in favor, Ms. Manning,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Dr. Pangalo,
Yes.
Ms. Nuncio,
Yes.
Mr. Cruz,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mayor Driscoll. Yes, 7 members voting, 7 in the affirmative. The matter carries. We stand adjourned. We got out early, Anna, just for you, 9 p.m. before 9 p.m. So thank you so much for your service and hope everybody has a great holiday if I don't see you before then. Okay, take care.
Take care.